For my second pick and the third overall of the Sunday six-pack, I'm going with the Tennessee Titans -6 against the Chicago Bears. Look, the Titans, I'm betting this for a number of reasons. I don't believe in the Bears at all. Their offense is terrible. And now they might be without 4 starting offensive linemen. They might from their opening roster. They have COVID issues. They have injuries to starters that are going to be out multiple weeks, one out of seat. I mean, so it is a mess what the Bears offensive line looks like. You might say, though, the Titans don't really get pressure, which is very true. And last week, the Bengals had, all backup offensive linemen everywhere, and that didn't matter. They didn't sack Burrow a single time. And, so what's going to be different this week? Well, number one, there's a big drop-off between Burrow and Nick Foles. Nick Foles hasn't been playing well. But most importantly, it looks like Tennessee is now going to have a full stable of corners. 2 of the worst corners in the NFL this year, Jonathan Joseph and Chris Jackson. Chris Jackson in the slot, Joseph on the outside. I mean, Joseph has been just getting roasted, and last week he was horrendous. So they cut him. And they signed Desmond King, who could play in the slot. He is a little vulnerable deep, but that's not where the Bears are going to beat you. And it looks like Adoree Jackson is going to come back this week, who's their best corner by far. They have 2 roster spots. They have a roster spot open, and they haven't said if he's going to play or not. But I think, judging from the cuts and cutting Joseph, that he's going to be back this week. He practiced last week. So now you have Adoree Jackson on the outside with Malcolm Butler, and now you have Desmond King, which is an enormous upgrade over Chris Jackson in the slot. So now you have a competent corner group, and the Titans haven't been able to cover all year. It's one of the reasons that on third down, they're allowing teams to convert at 62% of the time. That's the most in NFL history if the season ended today. By the way, third down conversions across the NFL are way up. Ed road teams.
Well, yeah, because of the Titans.
The Titans, there's a bunch of teams up there, but third downs in general across, and I think that has to do some with noise. If you look at road teams specifically, it's up. So the Titans' third down defense has been bad, but they haven't been able to cover anybody. And they're playing a Bears offense that is converting third downs at 34.86%. That's only better than the Jets. It's 31st in the NFL. But what I think most importantly is now that the Titans have their corners, Vrabel will be able to blitz. And he hasn't been able to do that. They've just been sitting back because their corners couldn't cover. And I disagree with that, but he just couldn't trust his corners. Now, if you can trust your corners,
Oh, no, I was going to – you mentioned Vrabel. And I actually wanted to get your thoughts on this because I came across this information. It's something that it hasn't been talked about enough. But Vrabel, remember, Dean Pease is gone now. Vrabel is his own defensive coordinator and didn't hire another one. I just wondered if you think that is playing into this defense. Because remember, I think we talked about it on last week's show, like Tennessee's defense until this year, they'd found a way kind of with okay talent to be – pretty good in points allowed, near the top of the league 2 years in a row. So I just wonder if you had any thoughts on kind of Vrabel taking over in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I think this year it's been more personnel than anything. I mean, they tried to sign what the hell's the guy's name from the Falcons?
Tack? Beasley.
No.
Beasley. They cut him too. Yeah.
All right, let me say that again. So they tried to, in the offseason, they just lack edge rush. So they tried to sign Vic Beasley. That didn't work out from the start, even from camp, and he just got cut. And let me say that again. And then they signed Clowney. He's been meh. He's definitely not the Clowney of old. So they're not generating much of an edge rush. But one of the things you got with Dean Pease, he loved the blitz. But this year, Vrabel hasn't really been doing that. He's been disguising blitzes and dropping back. And I think a lot of that is just personnel with all of the secondary issues, especially Adoree Jackson. Like the difference between their secondary play when Adoree Jackson really started to come on versus before he did is night and day. And he's been hurt. You have Chris Jackson playing in the slot. Logan Ryan, not great, but he was at least knew what he was doing out there in the slot last year. So now I think you finally have, Des King and Adoree Jackson and Malcolm Butler. I think that now Vrabel, it's just still, I'm still guessing here, is going to blitz a lot more, and he just hasn't been able to do so because he didn't trust his corners. So I think you'll see more blitzing here. The Bears defense has been keeping them in games. Their offense has been miserable across the board. They're number one on third down. They're number one in the red zone. But the Titans, we know, are elite in the red zone.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that washes out what the Bears have been doing. When they have been giving up drives, they've been shutting teams down in the red zone. But you can't really do that against the Titans. We know how bad the Bears' offense is. And, Bears offense also is 30th in red zone offense. Just across the board, it's terrible. So I think that the difference here is Titans will be able to finish drives, and they're going to be able to blitz more. Their secondary is now healthy, and I like the -6. I think they win by a touchdown plus here on a nice bounce back after 2 straight losses.
Yeah, and at least if you get the 6, you get that insurance because Gostkowski, man. I mean, I feel like Gostkowski makes me more nervous than the defense, but I agree. I think this is a good spot for the Titans. They're going to be able to outscore most teams, and simply because, like you said, they can finish drives. That defense has been so bad that it can only get better from here. And I think with the personnel kind of adjustments, you could tell that they're kind of at their wits' end, and they should be getting some guys back at the right time. They cut some guys. King will help. So yeah, I like the Titans as well.